Welcome to Game Changers live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tejeda. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Game Changers Live from Miami, Florida. Wherever you may be or wherever you may be listening from, you can catch us every Tuesday on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any other platform that you choose to listen to. And if you love what you hear in these episodes, please subscribe and share this with any of the great friends that you have that need to hear it. So I have a really special guest on today is John Climaco. So John is the chairman and CEO of CNS Pharmaceuticals. It's a company who's developing treatments for brain and central nervous system cancers. And their product, Berubicin, it's really exciting because it treats a disease that has not been treatable in the past, glioblastoma. And it's a really aggressive type of brain cancer, probably one of the most aggressive. And it's actually led to the deaths of people you know, Senator Ted Kennedy, President-elect Joe Biden's son, and as well as most recently, Senator John McCain. So previously, John held a number of executive leadership roles in a number of industries, so medical, biotech, dental, nuclear imaging, I mean, everything. He was executive vice president of Permafix Medical. He was director of Digirad Corporation, a leading manufacturer of cameras for nuclear imaging applications. Burner Dental Management, so one of the largest managers of dental practices in Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. He was also president and CEO, as well as a member of the board of directors of Axial Biotech, and it was a venture-backed molecular diagnostics company specializing in spine disorders, which he co-founded in 2003. He led Axial from inception through product development to international commercialization and created major strategic partnerships with international healthcare companies such as Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson, and Smith & Nephew. He holds a JD from the University of California College of Law. In his spare time, which is the coolest part, he's an avid alpinist, skier, and adventurer. He has led climbing expeditions to Pakistan, Nepal, China, Peru, and Alaska, and contributed writings on the subjects to anthologies, including Epic, Stories of Survival from the World's Highest Peaks, Danger, Stories of Trouble and Survival, and 30 Years of Climbing, the best writing from Climbing Magazine. His writing and photography has also appeared in Men's Journal, Patagonia, Marlboro Adventure, Climbing Magazine, Rock and Ice, and the American Alpine Journal. And he was recently a recipient to the Shipton-Tillman Grant for exploration in New Guinea. And he was also the host of the History Channel's Journey to the Center of the World, caving in Guatemala, you know, everything, right? So from CEO to caving, and he lives in Park City, Utah with his fiance and 2 children. So welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you so much. It's just great to be here.
Likewise, man. So I love the CEO outfit. It's definitely New York Stock Exchange, you know, ring the bell and NASDAQ like that. It'll definitely catch attention.
They probably would have thrown me out, you know, if I showed up.
Yeah, exactly.
Here in Park City, it's a little chilly in December, so this is how we roll. You know,
I love it. So John, tell me a bit more about CNS Pharmaceuticals, doing some really exciting things there. Tell me a bit more about what's going on with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you, I have, as you said, you know, I've done all kinds of different things in my career, different spaces, been in the healthcare industry for a long time. This is the most exciting thing that I've done. This company has the potential, and our lead product has the potential to really change the landscape of the game in an area of oncology that hasn't seen a lot of hope for a very long time, and that's glioblastoma. As you said, you know, this is a disease that does not discriminate. It is really uniformly fatal. It doesn't matter if you're the son of the president-elect. It doesn't matter if you're a Kennedy. It doesn't matter if you're John McCain. It doesn't actually matter if you're the president, believe it or not, of the largest cancer research institute in the world. That's MD Anderson, where our lead drug, Berubicin, was developed. If you get glioblastoma, your doctor is probably going to tell you that you have about 14 to 16 months to live. Almost everyone that gets this disease has it recur after the primary treatment, which is surgery followed by radiation and chemotherapy. The chemotherapy that's the current standard of care, believe it or not, it's only effective in about 40% of patients, and then it's only effective to stabilize the disease for a period of time. That means the tumor's not shrinking, but it's not growing, but eventually it will recur. And when it does, it's going to be even more aggressive, and it's going to be sadly very likely fatal. So we have a fantastic new drug that was developed by our founder, Dr. Valdemar Priebe, who's a professor of medicinal chemistry at MD Anderson, one of the world's leading experts in the development of the anthracyclines, which are the most commonly used and one of the most powerful classes of chemotherapy drugs that are out there. They're first-line therapies for breast cancer, ovarian cancer, testicular cancer, lung cancer, you name it. I like to think of it as this is like the sledgehammer in the oncologist toolkit. You know, if you have one of these common cancers, they're probably going to go to an anthracycline. But the trick here is that anthracyclines historically don't cross the blood-brain barrier. We have this very specialized network of cells that protects our brain. You know, this is the most important organ in the body. Nothing else functions without it. And so it's very, very well protected. And these specialized cells, they act, we sometimes say colloquially, like bouncers at a nightclub. They have a very long list of do not admits, and almost all chemotherapy drugs are on that list. So Dr. Priebe's innovation was to take a tried and true class of drugs that oncologists all over the world reach for first in their toolkit to treat all kinds of different cancers, and modify that molecule to be able to get into the brain past the blood-brain barrier. And once this drug, berubicin, is in the brain, it's going to do the same thing that anthracyclines do all over the body. That is, they're going to look for cells that are rapidly dividing, and they're going to disrupt that mechanism by which those cells divide, and they're going to kill those cells as a result. And the only cells that are really rapidly dividing in the adult brain are going to be tumor cells. So you're going to have a very beautiful, elegant, selective uptake in tumor tissue. It's going to leave the normal brain tissue alone. And we think that this innovation of his could really, again, change the game for patients that historically don't have a lot of hope in this space.
Wow. I mean, that definitely is a game-changing, treatment and medication. And so how far along are you guys in getting this out to the market?
So, every day we move closer and closer. This drug was the subject of a very successful phase 1 trial where 44% of patients who took it received a clinical benefit of stable disease or better. And that's sort of the gold standard in this very deadly cancer. That is, again, where the disease is static. It's not getting necessarily, the tumor's not shrinking, but it's not growing either. And that means your progression-free survival, your period where you're living longer, is extended. And that's what we want to see here. Obviously, we want to see overall survival improve, and there's evidence that berubicin does that as well. But that phase 1 was very successful in that regard. So what we have done, we went public about a year ago on NASDAQ, and in that time, we have manufactured drug product for our next stage of trials, both here and in Europe. That drug is now ready to go. And we submitted what's called our investigational new drug application, or IND, to the FDA about 2 weeks ago. They have a month to review it. We've been fielding questions from them, so we are crossing our fingers that we're about 2 weeks away from a green light from FDA to reintroduce this drug back into humans. And that will be a what we call a potentially pivotal phase 2 trial, meaning this time we're going to go from the phase 1, which was roughly 30 patients. We're going to now go to a phase 2, all trials combined, over 300 patients. And our hope is that if the data from the phase 2 looks like the data in the phase 1, we will be able to have a conversation with FDA about a potentially accelerated pathway to get this to patients clinically.
That's amazing. Now, how quickly does it work? Let's say, let's say it's already out in the market, somebody starts taking it. How quickly do you start seeing the effects of that?
Sure. Well, generally speaking, this drug is given by an infusion, and so it's a 3-day infusion on, so 3 days on, then 18 days off, and then another round. We have seen from the phase 1 results starting even during that first series of infusions. And then the complete responder patient, who I think I mentioned maybe before we started recording, but basically we had in that trial, as I said, 44% of patients received a very positive clinical benefit of stable disease or better. One patient in particular is still alive today, 14 years after treatment. And in 6 months, he went from having a lesion of GBM or glioblastoma about the size of a golf ball to being totally cancer-free. So, the results in this can be fairly rapid. Now, obviously, that, varies by patient. We don't expect everyone to see that type of benefit. But in a disease where, only 40% of patients today are genetically predisposed to respond to the standard chemotherapy that's given at all. So that means 60% of patients will have no benefit from chemotherapy. When you look at a new drug like berubicin that has a 44% positive response rate, you really start to see that it could change the game for these patients.
One of the things we were talking about earlier was people that have had brain tumors that we know that are friends of ours and
Right.
that we've experienced, and that just comes on very unexpectedly, right? People don't even realize they have it, and they kind of have a headache, and one thing leads to the other. They get scanned, and they're told the devastating news.
That's right.
And one of the things we were talking about earlier was a good friend of mine that has an unbelievable attitude. She had 2 brain tumors, brain cancer and lung cancer. And I've never seen an attitude like that before. I mean, amazing. I wish everybody had that energy and that mindset. How important is, there's a tremendous mind-body connection, right? That we know, right? That's right. Very obvious. And I know that, mindset and attitude is not going to cure cancer, but how important is that role of your attitude, your approach to the treatment and getting better that you've seen in the patients?
It's huge. I mean, it's hard to, overestimate how important that is. And I think that's one of the critical things about what we're doing with this drug. I mean, we are under no illusions that there is going to be a silver bullet for cancer, right? There's never going to be one thing that does it for everything. There's never going to be the perfect immunotherapy, the perfect vaccine, the perfect chemotherapy, the perfect surgical technique. It's going to be a team effort, a combination of all these things. But the important thing is that patients have hope, and realistic hope based on the data, that there may be a combination of therapeutics for their particular situation that can advance their life, extend their survival time, and potentially lead to a cure. And I see what we're doing here as providing some of that, because when I look at the data from this, from the phase 1 trial, and I understand the mechanism of action of this drug, how it works in the brain, I say to myself, if I got this diagnosis, if someone that I loved got this diagnosis, what would I want? I would want to know that there was something out there that could potentially move the needle for me. It might not, but one of the most sobering experiences that I've had in this project over the years I've been working on it, took place earlier this year, right before the pandemic. I was in Poland, in Warsaw, with our founder, Dr. Pribe, who is Polish. And we were at the largest cancer treatment center in Poland. And it's a place where basically if you have recurrent glioblastoma, you're eventually going to go there. Now, Poland is an interesting country. There's 48 million people, so it's not a huge country. But it turns out that of all the countries in the world, Poland provides the second most patients for clinical trials that lead to approval of drugs in the United States than any country other than the United States itself. So ahead of Germany, Italy, the UK, France, you name it, all the big places you would think, Poland is number 2. And the reason for that is that they have absolutely outstanding medical care. It's very centralized. It's very well organized. It's very rational. The standards of clinical research there are very high as well. So it's got all these great elements going on there. English is spoken. It's a great place to do clinical research. So we went to this place, and they're going to be participating in our study. They're going to be enrolling patients, and we were talking about the standard of care again in this very high standard environment. And the director of the center, I said, "Okay, well, tell me about your current standard of care." And she said, "Well, if you have this particular genetic variation that's well known that predisposes you to the effectiveness of the current standard of care drug for GBM, which is called temozolomide, we give it to you and we continue to give it to you until it stops working. And it eventually will stop working for everyone." I said, "Okay, that's about 40% of patients, as I mentioned before. Now, what about the other 60% of patients? Because in the US, regardless of your status of this genetic mutation, you get temozolomide. We like to treat people. We like to do things in the US. We always like to just throw the kitchen sink at problems.
Yeah.
Their delivery system's a little different." And she said, "Well, we send those patients to hospice."
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Wait, so basically these patients, you have surgery, you have radiation, and then if you're an unmethylated MGMT status patient, which is the technical term for what this genetic variant is, those patients don't get chemotherapy in Poland?" And she said, "No, we send those patients to hospice. They're going to die.
Wow.
We don't give them something that would give them false hope because we know that temozolomide won't work." And you could avert a pin drop, in the room. And I thought to myself, this is what we're doing here. These patients don't have a realistic source of hope to move forward. And it's a very cold, rational delivery. But the fact of the matter is, it's probably, in those cases, it's a reasonable thing to do. And we believe that berubicin, which is unaffected by that genetic variant, it is, again, it's that sledgehammer class of drugs. It's sort of effective against anything that's rapidly dividing, and it gets into the brain, which no other drug of its class does. This could provide that hope. And sort of back to your original question about attitude. I mean, imagine if you're one of these patients.
Yeah.
Test you, and you're unmethylated MGMT, and you've gone through surgery and you've gone through radiation. You say, but wait, there must be something.
Right.
There's nothing. There's literally nothing there or anywhere else in the world that's approved for those patients. And, if we're successful here, and the biology and the chemistry will tell us that in the next stage of investigation, that could be the source of hope for those folks. And that's a pretty powerful motivator to, work every day.
Right. I mean, that is going to be the game changer in so many people's lives. It's going to save lives and inspire families that there is hope. Man, that is quite a story between, with CNS and some of the work that you guys are doing. So congratulations on that. And hopefully, we're going to hear about some of these next stage approvals soon. I want to switch gears. Tell me a bit more about John Climaco, right? Because like we talked about, you've been an attorney, you've been in dental practice, you've held a number of executive positions in, nuclear imaging. I don't even know what that is. And then medical, biotech. I mean, how have you jumped?
What happened?
How have you jumped in so many executive positions? You've done well in all these different areas. I mean, what kind of goes on there?
I'll tell you. So basically what happened was, when I got out of college, I spent about 6 years as a climbing guide. I was traveling around the world, climbing mountains and taking clients all over the place. And more or less, was getting beat up pretty badly physically and decided I wanted to do something else. So I chose, maybe a sort of dull direction. I went to law school. But I went to law school in San Francisco. It was the 90s, the heart of the startup boom. I barely made it through law school before I got recruited into my first startup. And the bug hit me really hard. That company went public shortly after I joined. It was exciting, all this stuff. And I loved the idea of innovation and, and change and growing things, not just being a cog, but like saying, okay, hey, we get to write the rules. How do we want to build this company? How do we want to make this product? What do we want to do? I bounced back and forth between practicing law and startups for a few years. I was a partner in a firm. I had moved at that point to Utah. I was living here in the mountains. And one of my clients had an idea for, of all things, a molecular diagnostic, a genetic-based test for a progressive orthopedic disease, adolescent idiopathic scoliosis. That was his specialty. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, I guess if I had known then at that moment what I know now, or even by the time we got into the thick of the company, I might not have taken on the challenge, but it sounded again like the opportunity to change the game in a space. Here was a situation where you had a lot of kids getting x-rayed all the time because they had a little curve in their spine, getting exposed to, lots of x-rays during their formative years, getting put in these braces, all of this stuff. And my client said, look, I think we can figure out what's going to happen with these kids just on the basis of a saliva test. And this was 2003, so it was before cheap, widely available gene sequencing. And we got Johnson & Johnson to back us. We got Smith & Nephew to back us. We got Medtronic to back us. We raised a truckload of money and we built this test, and it's still in use today. And over the course of that 10-year period, it ate my law practice. So I left the practice for good. I became CEO of that company. And I think
I'm a recovering attorney, right?
Yeah, recovering attorney, exactly. I think what happened was, to be honest, over that period of taking this product and this company literally from a cocktail napkin, sketch of what would this look like if we had a test, all the way through it, commercialization, regulatory approval, venture financing, massive corporate partnership, all that stuff. So to be honest, I hit every pothole you could hit. Every brick wall you could run into, I did. Every mistake it seems like you could make, we made, and we still somehow managed to succeed in our mission. Yeah. And I think in that process, at the end of all that, sometimes you think, what good it was all this, right? I mean, yeah, we got we did it and that's it, but boy, what a road to take. And it turned out that there were a lot of, investors that liked that kind of experience and thought maybe it would have some bearing on their companies. So I got tapped by a series of hedge fund investors to help them with some turnaround projects. One was in a medical practice management, another was in nuclear medicine. And that was sort of how I got introduced to these different companies that were in various stages of difficulty. And I was either a board member at times, sometimes an executive. And I was quite happy doing that. I did that for about 6 years. And then I met Dr. Priebe, our founder at CNS, and it just hit me. He had all the ingredients that I had been looking for in a new project. He had an awesome piece of technology that he had developed. He was super passionate. He really knew what was going on. The solution that he had seemed simple and elegant, but totally precise and effective. He had lots of data behind it. The project had been backed by other people much smarter than me before I got involved. And I thought, this is a chance again to take on a really hard challenge. But the deck I felt like was really stacked in our favor. And if I could bring sort of all that, school of hard knocks management and startup experience over the last, at that point, 17 years to bear on this, maybe I could help steer this baby of Dr. Priebe's out into commercialization and in the clinic. And if we could do it, we would make some money for our shareholders. We would make patients happy, and we'd have a lot of fun doing it. So that's what we're doing. So.
Challenge seems to be a common theme in your life, right? Because if it's not rock climbing, extreme skiing, taking on these projects where you hit every possible obstacle and barrier,
right?
What is it about challenges that excites you, that gets you hungry, that gets you?
I think, I guess, I mean, I grew up in a family that kind of thrived on that sort of challenge and environment. You know, my dad was the first person in his family to go to college. You know, he built an incredibly successful law firm. He had an enormous practice, built it himself over the course of 50 years. And, you know, I used to watch him sometimes and think, when does it get easy? You know, and he used to tell me it never gets easy, John. Like that's the game. There's no end. It's just the game. You keep playing. And I feel like that's just sort of who I am. I like this. And if it were easy, I don't think I would know what to do with myself. And I love the process of solving problems. You know, one would think at this stage that, okay, well, the process of developing a drug is a well-worn path. You do this, you do this, you do this, and it works, and then you're approved. And it's nothing like that. You know, it's a constant series of everyday challenges, whether it's, you know, me sitting down with our CSO and talking about, you know, a chemistry problem that they still are having difficulty solving in the manufacturing process, and what they're thinking about doing, and what do I think about it? Well, okay, I'm not a chemist, but, you know, I can weigh in on how this fits in our overall program. I may be talking an hour later with our chief medical officer about the trial design. And I'm not a neuro-oncologist, MD, PhD, as she is, but what I can do is bring to bear my experience from having taken other products from inception through trials and analysis and regulatory approval, and probe and ask her questions that I've seen can change her thinking. And I just, you know, that's what I love. It's all a series of problem solving events, and all the while maintaining focus on the goal, which is my main job, which is to say, as I said, you know, this is our founder's baby. I think it could be a game changer. My job is to deliver that baby and keep the team focused, to keep the company financed, to keep the investors happy, you know, continuing to tell the story and build momentum, and all the while keeping our eyes on the prize, which is, you know, how do we move this molecule through the process as quickly and efficiently as possible?
So having a diverse and diverse in terms of experience, in terms of experiences, not only having all PhDs in there, but having some business people that provide different perspectives. Were you the one that pulled your team together, all your, you know, your board and all the people? And how did you go about hand selecting this so that you bring that A team together, you know, to succeed?
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, I was very lucky because a lot of the folks on the team have worked together in various projects over, you know, many years. And so it was a question of pulling some resources together that knew one another, but then also going out to our network. You know, I have an absolutely top-notch CFO, Chris Downs, who I met when I was on the board of a company where he was the you know, sort of right-hand man to that CFO, and we worked together to turn that company around. I brought in a board member from my nuclear imaging days who was a CFO at a company where I was on the board, and I knew that he would be just an absolute superstar asset to have as chair of our audit committee and on our board with all his great experience. So, you know, we Dr. Priebe and I worked together to pull the team together, and it's a total teamwork effort. I mean, we have a very small organization, and it's basically as flat as can be, and we work you know, pretty effectively, I think, as collaborators. We all respect one another, and I think that's, you know, everyone approaches this in some ways, you know, in some ways with a beginner's mind, right? You look at these problems, and I think there's no not invented here syndrome. There's no this is how we've always done it syndrome. We always work together, and we try to really you know, we try to really respect other people's experiences, because everyone, you know, I gave you my take on my history, you know, all the barriers that I've hit and everything else, but everybody on the team has those same experiences. And when we work together and we talk and we share those experiences, I think that's how we've sort of, you know, woven our way through the minefield, I guess, to get here on the verge of being able to conduct another trial, you know, a year after an IPO and a small IPO in that. And that kind of collaboration, I think, it goes across the company, right? It could be on the chemistry, it could be on the clinical development, it could be on the finance. We've all we've all been in this game in different ways for a while. And so we pool all those experiences. It's definitely not a top-down, management philosophy that I have. It's definitely much more of a team effort.
Now you've intuited, you had an intuition, and you said that the bug bit you, right? And you said, oh, this is it. And so a lot of, what I tell a lot of my clients is especially now that, many have lost their jobs, they're changing careers, the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, listen, a lot of us get into our careers because what we do in college or what our parents told us to do. And, your dad was an attorney. So you said, well, I might as well become an attorney and kind of follow in his footsteps. And then something happened, right? You had that epiphany. You saw that opportunity and you said, oh my God, that's, what really drives me. So I tell them to, look at your life, look at the breadcrumbs, follow the breadcrumbs. These are, the clues that life leaves you that you say, hey, I was so alive during that time. I loved what I did. And you can clearly see that you love what you do. And so it doesn't feel like work, even though it's very intense. It's a passion of yours. So what advice can you give to people who are possibly in that state of transition right now and are, looking at other opportunities, have that courage to go out and do it?
Yeah, I think, maybe the advice that I would give on that, it's a great question, is really just to totally take the blinders off. If you asked me 25 years ago or 30 years ago, if I would be this passionate about the pharma business or chemistry, look, I don't know if I should say this, but the last chemistry course I took was in high school.
Yeah.
Chemistry is, I can reach up and pull down some molecular models here. This is all I do, but I love it. And I love it because I see where it's going, and it's another tool. I've enjoyed the process of, over the last, many years, learning a ton about the chemistry behind this molecule and the space in general in anthracyclines, because it's incredibly powerful and it's enabling me to do what I want to do, which is, change this space. I see an opportunity here for patients. I see an opportunity for our shareholders. And in order to do that, I had to look at something, let's say, differently than I might have. When I was much younger, I had a totally different concept about what I was going to do with my life. And if you had told me maybe that I would find passion in this, I would have said, no, that's just not going to happen. Like, I've avoided those subjects like the plague. I don't have an affinity for them or what have you. But it turns out that, by sort of opening my eyes, looking at the opportunities and trying to see what value my skill set could bring, I found a place that fits really well for me. I've worked with tons and tons of scientists over the years who are absolutely just brilliant, incredible scientists, incredible innovators, but maybe not the best storytellers, maybe not the best managers, maybe not the best communicators, maybe not the person to say, hey, I have this incredible idea and it could totally change the game in orthopedics. It could totally change the game in nuclear medicine. It could totally change the game in neuro-oncology. But if you can't tell that story to shareholders, to the street, if you can't harness the resources around you to effectuate that and realize that goal, it's just going to remain an idea. And ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about execution. And so I don't know exactly what my particular skill set is, but maybe it's helping draw the net around everybody and tell the story and keep the passion and the momentum going so we can see this thing, through to fruition.
Fantastic. So one last question, this being Gamechangers, was there a defining moment in your life or an event, something someone told you, something where it just triggered your takeoff, in terms of how you thought, some of the risks you took? Was there something that was kind of a game-changing event or kind of attitude that you developed, or something that happened that you said, man, I can do so much more? Was it that time where you got picked up, out of law school?
Yeah, I'll tell you, there have been a lot. I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of fulcrum, sort of inflection points in my life where I either, got to go on an expedition to the Himalayas with one of my heroes from my childhood or whatever, you know, or in business, and you know, your eyes get open. But in this subject, I think it's interesting that you zeroed in on that, because yes, when I was in law school, you know, I read an article in Time magazine about a startup at that time called Quokka that was working on bringing sports to the internet. This was in like 1998, and they were going to, you know, they were building a website for the NBC Olympics and for the World Cup and for, you know, MotoGP, all these crazy things they were doing. Yeah. And I read about the CEO in Time magazine, and I thought, wow, I'm going to write this guy and see if he's interested in this idea that I have. And so I found his email and I wrote him, right? You just read about somebody in Time magazine and you write them a letter. Everybody does that every day. And the next thing I know, I'm in his office and I'm pitching him on an idea. And what blew me away was not only did he agree to fund my idea and ultimately hire me at the company, and it led to a great friendship and mentorship and everything, but you know, this person, his name's Al Ramadan. He went on to be an incredibly successful executive, but Al just immediately blew past what I thought was the sum total of my dream. And I can still see him saying it. Yeah, we're going to fund that. But what I really want you to do, and it was a totally next level, much bigger idea that I hadn't even thought of. And when I was released to that, that was sort of how I blew up my own dream, I guess, in that space, and opened my mind to the possibilities of really changing. You know, I came into it all about a small idea that I had about one event that I wanted to cover. And Al's vision was to change the way sports was perceived and covered and experienced by spectators. And I hadn't connected the two until he opened my eyes. And then it was all bets are off. We can really change the world. And I've tried to keep that in mind all the time, whether it's, you know, driving my teammates at CNS to say, okay, but have you asked this question? You know, are we thinking about this? What are we going to say when we're sitting down to the FDA? Are they going to send us back to do more work? Have we thought of everything? What is really the outside possibility for what we're doing here? How far can we push this? And so I'm always trying to take the blinders off, not draw the circle around the project or my life where it is today, but say, you know, where could it be? How big could I dream? And how can I get there? And that was a huge event for me. And, you know, that was somebody who I'd never met anybody at that point who'd taken a company public and, you know, right. From an idea and manifested this whole thing and hundreds of employees and game-changing technology. And there it was right in front of me. And I've sort of, you know, continued to pursue that ever since. So
having a mentor that can see more in you than you see in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the most unbelievably beautiful things that can happen to you in your life. And so if you're out there and you're listening to this, know that you can do more. You can do so much more, but you, like you said, you got to take the blinders off and open your mind to it so that you can allow these opportunities to come in, and surround yourself with people who have been down that road, who have, you know, seen the mountaintops. They can see the next 3 or 4 mountaintops to show you that light.
Absolutely. You know, yeah. Don't limit yourself, because, you know, it strikes me people are almost always capable of much more than they think they are. You know, just give them the right environment, you know. So, John,
it was great having you on Gamechangers, chairman and CEO of CNS Pharmaceuticals, doing some amazing things with Berubicin, hopefully coming out soon to treat these very aggressive types of brain cancers and other diseases. So, John, where can somebody reach out to you if they wanted to email you once you're on Time Magazine? How can they email you?
Yeah, you can find me at cnspharma.com. I'm easy to find. It's Climaco at cnspharma.com. And our website is cnspharma.com. We're on NASDAQ. Our ticker is CNSP. And that's it. So keep an eye on us, and wish us luck, because we have an ambitious goal here, but I think it's within reach.
Fantastic. Thank you, John, for being on Gamechangers, buddy.
You bet. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. Take care.
All right. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.